The New York will recap of Game 3 with Louisa Thomas, Vinson Cunningham. I'm David Remnick. Vinson, you look crestfallen.
Not happy. Nothing went right that needed to go right. Just wasn't. It wasn't our game from really the beginning. But
Now
for many minutes.
tell me how you saw it shaping up in the first half. Because I had a bad feeling about this game from the get go.
Well, they came out continuing part of the game plan from game 2: extreme physicality, extreme force, and again, kind of like sort of got their way with that stuff largely on the level of how it was going to be called. But then the Knicks came back as they do, sort of starting at the end of the first into the second. Came back, had a lead of 7 by the at the half, but all the while Jalen Brunson hasn't had a great game yet, and there was a lot of different. They were throwing a lot of different looks at Cat. He couldn't really even get the ball thrown to him, largely. So it really wasn't. It wasn't our game.
Yeah, Louisa, you're looking much happier than us too, because you're the Spurs fan among us. They seemed more confident. They seemed more fluid than the Knicks. They seemed to get the ball moving a lot more from the very beginning.
Yeah, right from the jump. I mean, you saw Wemby attack the rim with a lot more urgency. I think the first 2 Spurs possessions, I think, were Wembanyama dunks, and neither of them were very quiet. I think he wanted to sort of establish early that this was not going to be one of these mid-range floater, kind of type games, that he understood the assignment. And that was on defense too. I was physical on both sides of the ball. Obviously, it got a little bit spicy there at a few moments. But I thought also the player that I think we talked about last time, Stephon Castle, really kind of played a mystifying game in game 2, and he seemed very much. I mean, he was phenomenal, and his connection with Wembanyama was really well established, and Vassell was also quite good, and he was kind of making all those like little winning plays that you sort of. He's not the star in any given moment, but you sort of like look at the box score and you're like, wow, they're crushing in his minutes, because he's just making the right plays over and over again. So I think the Spurs seemed, as you said, much more connected and much more urgent. And, I think that probably the Knicks are also like just a little bit, maybe because I'm so tired, I come back to this idea that the Spurs had looked really tired, and, 2 days off, and maybe did them some good, and the next after playing, getting really shoved around for 2 consecutive games, for maybe not feeling quite so fresh.
Well, let's pull the camera back. The day began with me getting a text showing Wemby in the park doing a little sketching.
Yeah.
We know that he's had episodes of religious or semi-religious contemplation. He retreats to various places for meditation purposes. And I think the indication in our earlier conversations is that he was a little soft.
He's a book club,
That'll always kill you.
They're reading 1984 right now.
They're reading 1984, which he was facing 1984. Then was game to the world for them. And he seemed in a much better frame of mind, unafraid. Hit a couple of threes that just, shoved a dagger in my heart. I don't know about the Knicks.
Yeah.
He just looked like a different guy tonight. The other night you described him, Louisa, as somebody about to cry. Not tonight.
No.
He was kind of back to himself, especially on offense. He still hasn't reached the sort of numbers of rebounds as he was getting early in the playoffs. I do still think that there's a Wemby fatigue coming in, and by the end of the game, he was kind of back to the bad habit of being out by the 3-point line. But I think the part of their game plan was getting him involved early. There were lots of lobs being thrown from Castle to Wemby, which is like, you were talking about this last time, Louisa. That's like their bread and butter, those two guys working together. So there was a focus on getting him the ball, which, you know, by the way, on the other side, I wish there had been a more of a schematic focus on getting Cat the ball, but they worked on that for Wemby, and it paid out.
Guys, Louisa. So contemplative Wemby crossed over into what tonight?
I mean, we saw him throw Brunson to the ground at one point, which somehow I think the refs were the only people in the building not to see that. I do think that he was he was mad, as maybe is the right word. He was certainly playing with a bit of an edge, that whether or not it was like engineered or whether or not it was organic or whether or not he you know, drew himself into a raging massive feeling. But you could see that kind of intensity come through. And I think that they have a lot of players with like a unusual kind of psychological composition for like what you would imagine their ages. I mean, Harper, once again, Dylan Harper, guys, he's like 20 years old. And he plays like he's, I don't know, older than I am. I mean, but not, more mature than I am, not like older than I am. He plays like he has the legs of a 20-year-old and the brain of, a wise man. And the composure, and the poise and the kind of sense of what's at stake. So, I was really impressed by the kind of mixture of calmness tonight and a little bit more aggression, which is absolutely what they needed.
Got out coached too. If I have to say, the game plan that the Spurs came in with, they executed on. Constant ball movement, Wemby's in and out. They're all over the Knicks defensively, daring the referees to call fouls, which they do with very little frequency. And the Knicks had no answer for it. The Knicks were not as tight on defense in the backcourt. And they weren't shoving Wemby around with the same sense of confidence and bravado that they did in the first couple of games. How high is your panic at this moment, Vinson Cunningham?
No panic. No panic.
Really?
It is good. It is good for the Knicks to sort of like have another thing to figure out. I do think it's also just psychologically
okay.
It's very difficult to be on a 12-game winning streak, even in the regular season. That becomes a thing, and so okay, fine, we're not undefeated for a month and a half anymore. But I think, speaking of coaching, the next thing that needs to happen is a direct plan to get Cat the ball. Being fouled a lot, but he's also being illicitly harassed in lots of interesting ways, and they need to run him through some picks. They need to do some stuff to get him the ball in some spaces where he can operate, because that was part of the winning formula in the first two games, and it was sorely missing tonight.
I wish I could remember who said this, but there's some coach recently who at the end of an outrageously long winning streak said he was relieved to lose. He was happy to lose, because at some point you lose the locker room, when you're winning all the time. They don't like really believe you. And there's something like, now you could actually just...
I didn't have that at all tonight. We had taken 2 on the road. That's what segue and all that, but the hell with it. Knicks had taken 2 on the road, which is just an outrageous, galling thing for Spurs. And then they're going into the Garden, which is, Mecca, blah, 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 and the crowd is going crazy. And you would have thought that all the momentum was theirs, and it was not in the first few minutes. Now, we've gotten this far without mentioning any politician's name. I didn't see the mayor at all. Apparently, he bought a standing room ticket, which is such a cool political move, in the gods. Way up high.
By the roof, yeah.
Did they ever show him on air? I didn't see it.
I didn't see it. If they did, I didn't see it. And, even the other guy, not that much.
The other guy was in a box with Dolan, the owner, and there didn't seem to be much focus on him either on television, and everybody didn't seem to not pay much attention.
he got booed a lot during the national anthem. At certain points, you couldn't hear the very well delivered national anthem by Avery Wilson. Great
Very
singer,
done, yeah.
very nicely done. But that was when the Trump spectacle happened.
If it had ended there, Vincent?
Yeah, no, they cut back to him a couple times. He was sitting next to Dolan. There's a tweet going around that has him appearing to be slightly dozing, which he does, which he does on TV all the time now. But it wasn't a big focus.
We have him dozing on the cover of the New Yorker this week. The new cover of the New Yorker is of him at the UFC fight in the backyard of the South Lawn of the White House, while the vice president, the secretary of state, the pretenders to the throne in 2028 are beating the crap out of each other, and the president he's dozing. So
Yeah,
that theme is well rehearsed.
Mike Bloomberg also got a full body dive
Whoa!
from Alvarado, so that's another thing.
This is a man well into his 80s who had a guy hurtling bodily into him. I didn't think he was going to survive that.
He seemed to have a reddish face, but he was resolutely being like, fine, all good.
I'm cool.
Yeah,
Bloomberg.
might be in an ice bath tonight though.
Yeah, he had a better night, I think, than some of the people on the Knicks. Who kept them in the game, Vincent?
Who kept them in the game? I mean, OG Anunoby. And one of my sadnesses about tonight is to waste such a great OG game.
Yep.
Because it was vintage, hitting his threes, strong drives, closing off Wemby, going in for two-handed dunks again. It was classic Anunoby. I think Draymond Green, whose presence I waver on. But during the halftime show, he said, that he looked like pre-injury OG from, the glorious moments of last season. And I agreed with that. He really came out great I thought that when I thought we were going to win in the middle of the third, I was like, oh, no, we can do this. It was because he was really keeping us there. He seemed to be the only person that I could even say had a good game.
Now, Louisa, in our last time out, you gave a pretty definitive prediction that once the Spurs had lost 2 on the road, no shot. You sticking with that?
No team has ever come back from losing their first 2 games at home. And I mean, there have only been, I think, 3 teams that have lost the first 2 games at home, period. So, I mean, it's hard to do. But I do think that certainly the Knicks, the Spurs are a young team. They like doing improbable things. They spent all season kind of proving other people wrong. They do seem to play a little bit freer and a little bit more kind of the kind of hyper physical, aggressive, dynamic, high flying style when they're the underdogs. I mean, they do kind of like, I think, to rise to the occasion. So maybe this will be some kind of turning point for them. But I would say that it is a tall order against a very good basketball team. I mean, these Knicks tonight, did not play very well, but no team wins forever. It's that's just the truth.
You two have been going back and forth with some really bravura pieces on this series, really terrific pieces. Your latest, Louisa, ended with a wonderful kicker about how the Spurs can play better, but so can the Knicks. How much better can the Spurs get? How much can they lift up their game?
I think a lot. And it all begins with Wembanyama. I mean, he played much better tonight.
Right.
And I think that we saw that. But I think that, there are I think Fox is still a bit injured. I think the fact that a 20-year-old is kind of balling out right now is both magnificent, but also a sign that maybe some other guys might might be a little bit nervous. But I do think, I do think that they are feeling it a little bit more, and they can only get better from here. I mean, they're still not scoring easily. They're playing some terrific. Those guards play such hard.
What are their shots? There's a kismet in this game. Sometimes the ball goes through the 22-inch hoop, and sometimes it clanks off the back.
They also missed a lot of free throws tonight. I mean, if this had been if they had lost by a small margin, there would have been a lot of,
And
sleepless
yet
nights.
again, the most valuable player or certainly the most valuable coach for the Knicks might be our challenge guy.
Yes.
I mean, think about this. So there was a huge challenge play that was a nice turnaround for the Knicks. Ultimately, they didn't take full advantage, but it kind of kept them in the game for a few more minutes.
Yeah, the push. If we'd won, that might have gained a capital P on the push there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were little moments. Just so much to Louise's point. The Knicks played a terrible game, and they still only lost by what 4? What was it? So it's. I think it's up in the air, but I still
I have an alert from the social media service that will not speak its name. It's been sent to me by our colleague Michael Luo. It's Mayor Zoran Mamdani is watching the Knicks game with state lawmakers. They always know how to have a good time from a perch that appears to be high above the court. In fact, it seems to be almost on Mars. There's our mayor having a good time.
there
Amazing.
he is.
There in some focus.
There he is.
He's having a better time than this somewhat sleepy president of the United States, but he's a young man. He's a younger man.
Yeah,
And there
man.
were watch parties all over the city. Are people do you think they'll be dragging home from
It's gonna be. I mean, they instituted a really big one in Bryant Park. I think the logic was to compensate for the closed down area around Madison Square Garden, which is of course very contentious move. So it might be like the Warriors getting home tonight. Just obstacle after obstacle on subway, mean streets. I don't know.
Yes, the Warriors is a movie that kind of resembles The Odyssey.
Yeah.
Any the one thing that I thought it was encouraging for the Knicks, it's a bitter pill this night because we thought we'd be up 3-0, which really is tantamount to winning it. That some players that you really don't think about much had kind of a nice night. Clarkson had a
Good night.
big night. Hart seems to have a three-point shot that's come back to him after it deserted him for weeks
Yeah.
and weeks. So I try to find the silver lining.
There was a lovely story in The Athletic about this. I mean, they're all kind of reaching, including my own, like geography here. But there was this piece. I think the headline was like, "There's no egos on this team," but there was this really nice um, section about Jordan Clarkson and this basically how he just like blossomed at one point in this season. And a reporter had asked, do you think that Clarkson's like development is a really good example or a role model for the younger players? He asked Brunson this, and Brunson responded, "It's a good example for all of us or
Yeah.
for everybody." And I love that answer. I mean, it's just there is something about this team where you do feel like everybody sort of is looking to each other and everybody has to be sort of ready.
The Knicks have to work so hard. I guess I hadn't watched San Antonio enough this season to get a full sense of how hard a team has to whip the ball around and around and around. At one point toward the end of the game, the announcer said that Wemby had 3 blocks, which is not a superhuman number of blocks. Bill Russell used to routinely get 8 blocks, 10 blocks in a game. Will Chamberlain kind of thing when the old pivot system, which has long since been abandoned by decades. But the amount of times that the ball would go inside and not under the basket, but just in the paint.
Yeah.
And they would think better of it because
It
they
helps.
know they're going to get it pushed back on them. They know it's going to get blocked. And they take a far lesser shot. That was happening a lot to the Knicks. And the other thing that was happening is they're getting held up so much that the first time they really make a move toward the basket is with 8 seconds left on the 24. And very often you're getting a forced shot, not an open three from the corner, but a kind of off balance shot that, okay, Jalen Brunson can make it, but to depend on everybody making a shot when they're parallel to the floor, that's asking a hell of a lot. That's a lot.
The shot clock management on offense was very scary, and that was one of the great things that OG was doing. He bailed out a lot of those possessions with 2 and 3 seconds left on the shot clock. But to your point about the paint, there was even a great OG dunk where upon replay, you could see him checking for Wemby at
Exactly.
every dribble, just like he's even the good moments. There's this like, where is he?
Only option is to dunk.
That's
Or
right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did
Gosh, Landry Shamet tried this like floppy layup, and it's like, dude, if you're gonna go up and Wemby's in a game, you have to dunk it. Otherwise, it's not happening.
you go up
it
strong, you go up at all.
Did
Louisa,
you see Brunson's, I think is his first score of the game? This like falling backward. I mean, it was a very kind of impressive high degree of difficulty shot, but he shot it absurdly high. Like the arc was so high, and then they showed a replay from a different
crazy.
angle, and you could see Wembanyama going up like from very far away for the block, and
Yeah,
he was like twice his arm was like twice
but
Brunson's height.
it's not figure skating. In figure
Yeah.
skating, you get a degree of difficulty add or diving or something like that. Basketball, it's you get 2.
And I think that there's something psychological that happens there when you have to work so hard, to score. Those are the Knicks' first 2 points, I think. Like it's like that's going to be a tough night. Yeah. So I do also think that there was a lot of conversation for the game about from myself included about how well the Knicks were moving the ball, especially because they were doing these sprays. So they drive into the ball and they kick the ball out to the perimeter. Another one drives in, kicks the ball out, and they move it along the perimeter. And the ball movement is just phenomenal.
It was like it was almost like a Globetrotters thing where they were gonna stop and spin the ball with a finger. It was
But they
just
just
so
couldn't get
much.
into the paint tonight.
Yeah.
So like, and a lot of that had to do, I think, Carl Anthony Towns was like kind of taken out of the game. Shamet was sort of like all over the place. I mean, they just sort of had they had trouble penetrating in that way, which kind of bogged them down, especially I think, for certain like stretches of the game and the
I thought Cat did not match his first 2 games in terms of his intensity and his success.
in fairness, it's a high bar.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do the Knicks have to work Vincent, what do the Knicks have to be thinking about going into Wednesday night? Because that's a huge, huge game.
It's a big game, big game. I mean, what we just said is right. Cat needs to be, I think, top priority, and just in terms of getting his game back on. A lot of the things that happened tonight, you can't necessarily depend on. You can't say that OG is going to, score mid-20s again. You certainly can't say that Josh Hart is going to be hitting threes, which, another lament of mine is that I said this earlier in one of our other chats, you got to win the Josh Hart makes threes games because they're.
Yeah.
Mm. So I think it's Cat just being able to get the ball, collect entry passes, and continue to work on releasing. I didn't like how much Brunson dribbled the ball this game at all. I think somebody else has got to be bringing the ball up.
If it's horizontally and in the right near the midcourt line. I thought that was gonna be a backcourt violation half the time.
Many times he's caught all in this corner until there's 19 into the shot clock. It's not great. So cliche to say Towns and Brunson have to play better, but in this case, I really do think that in their respective roles, they need to sort of counter some of the counters that the Spurs put out today.
And what are the Spurs gonna look to do better?
I mean, I think that they're going to do some of what they started doing a little bit more, getting the ball into, well, Wembanyama, first of all, just being more forceful, using his size and his length, continue to establish that connection. I think that they defended really well, especially you were just talking about Brunson getting like caught, back they are picking up really early. It's not like a full court press, but it's uncomfortable. And so I think that they're going to want to keep that up. They got to maybe practice a few free throws. Little free throw shooting practice might help. And I think also
can come over and give them a little lesson on how to shoot it as flat as possible and goink it off the back iron.
I also do think that there's, this game, part of what makes this series feel a little bit volatile is, the Knicks are capable of coming back at any given moment. But there's also sometimes a sense of these games because they're so physical that like things are like just on the edge. And I think that that's injects a kind of uncertainty. And that's one of the things that makes these games like both thrilling and a little bit stressful, no matter who you're rooting for.
Now, how do you spend your days, Vincent? Was it out in the non-basketball watching hours? Are you
Well,
sleepwalking through history here?
I mean, I'm walking around with just a pained look on my face. I actually went into our offices today to record Critics at Large,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and yeah, I carried around the knot in my stomach on the subway, and I carried it back home. And one of my good friends called me to commiserate, and he was like, "I'm coming over there." My friend comes over, and we watch the game together. But it's just a lot of shaking of heads, and I think tomorrow's gonna be more of the same, more of the same. There's gonna be some.
Louisa will pass her day more easily.
What's that?
After a Spurs game, Louisa will pass her day
I
too.
will be getting up at 4:30 a.m. to get a flight to come to New York City, actually. So
I hope I'll
Man,
see you. I hope I'll see you. Guys, thank you so much. We'll see you after game 4, also in New York. I hope nobody suffered from any Trump derangement syndrome. That did not seem to be a factor.
one of the amazing things about, I mean, I can,
Chose not to give a
it's,
damn.
it seemed bigger than Trump. Like, can we just, it was great,
What a great illusion.
Yes.
Let's cling to it.
that's why he
Vincent
got to be there, you know?
Oh, God. Louisa Thomas, Vincent Cunningham. I'm David Remnick. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Take care.